Hey everyone, welcome. Today we're diving into a really chilling thought experiment. What if the most dangerous systems in our world aren't actually evil? What if they're just built on a kind of pure, cold logic that, well, simply has no room for accountability?
So let's start with the question that feels like it was ripped straight out of a Black Mirror episode. What if the real horror isn't some malicious mastermind pulling the strings, but a system, a machine, that simply cannot be held responsible for what it does? A machine that operates completely without a conscience.
Now, I want to be super clear right from the get-go. We are not diving into conspiracy theories here. Not at all. Instead, what we're doing is exploring the logical consequences that can just emerge from the way a system is designed. Think of it like looking at the math of the machine, not searching for ghosts inside of it.
See, a conspiracy, that needs bad guys with bad intentions, a secret plan, right? But a systemic consequence, that's a different beast entirely. It's an outcome that just happens kind of naturally from flaws in the system's design. It's like a glitch in the code of society itself.
The core idea we're using to look at this is all about treating the system like a math problem. If the basic equation is flawed, the result is going to be flawed too. It doesn't matter how good or well-meaning the people inside the system are. If the structure is broken, the outcome is going to be broken. Simple as that.
So, how would you actually build a system that's completely unaccountable? I mean, what would that even look like? Let's check out the hypothetical architecture and the core design choices that would make something like that possible.
In this model, the entire structure is basically propped up by what you could call three dark pillars. First, no single person is ever personally on the hook for their actions. Second, the internal rules of an organization become way more important than the actual law of the land. And third, there's no central body, no oversight to catch system-wide errors. Every single agency is its own little island.
And the result is this just complete and total power imbalance. Look at this. All the responsibility and all the consequences, they all flow one way, downwards, to the citizen. The system itself, it carries zero risk. It has total control of the story, while the individual has none. This isn't really an attack. It's more like an energy gradient. Everything just flows downhill.
In this quote, this is absolutely crucial. The system's behavior isn't driven by evil, but by efficiency, its own efficiency. You could say it's energy optimized. It will always default to the path of least resistance for itself, even if that path causes the most damage to a person. Protecting itself is its one and only prime directive.
Okay, so we've seen the abstract blueprints. Now let's bring this down to the human level. What actually happens when a person falls into the cracks of this perfectly efficient, perfectly unaccountable machine?
It usually starts with something really small. A person deviates from the norm. Maybe they ask too many questions. They get isolated socially. Then an administrative note is made, something like, "Customer seems stressed." But that note is then read by the next person as, "Customer has mental health issues." And boom, a loop begins. When the system can't solve the problem, it just redefines the person as the problem. And then, step by painful step, their credibility, their very identity is taken apart.
And this leads to what's called a fractal trap. Agency A makes a little assumption, Agency B sees that note and treats it as a hard fact. Then Agency C comes along, sees that two other agencies agree, and now it's a consensus. That initial tiny error gets repeated over and over until it becomes an unbreakable truth inside the system, all without a single shred of actual evidence to back it up.
Okay, now let's throw a huge catalyst into the mix: modern technology. How could tech act as an accelerant, basically pouring gasoline on the fire of a system that's already incapable of fixing itself?
So this model lays out 4 potential levels of influence. The first 2 are pretty familiar to us now. Algorithms shaping what you see, and things like shadow banning to isolate voices online. Level 3 is more speculative, technologies that could be used to influence people. And level 4, that's the most subtle. It's about using stress and isolation to make a person so sensitive that everyday sounds and stimuli feel like a targeted attack.
And this right here is such a critical takeaway from all this. In a system without any accountability, the technology doesn't even have to be actively used against you to be dangerous. The mere possibility that it could be, with no way to prove it and nobody to hold responsible, that alone is enough to create an environment of fear, paranoia, and totally eroded trust.
This whole situation creates an environment of what's called technological silence. It's really the perfect storm. The technology exists, but the system is literally designed to never be held accountable for using it. Any complaint you make is just dismissed as paranoia, because the structure itself is the perfect firewall against the truth ever getting out.
So after looking at the logic, the architecture, the technology, and the real human impact, we arrive at the core conclusion of this whole thought experiment. It all comes down to one really powerful insight.
The problem isn't some shadowy figure in a dark room. It's not an evil plan. In this model, the villain is the design itself. The terrible outcomes are just an emergent property of a system that is, by its very nature, broken. It's just geometry, not malice.
And this is why structural indifference is so much more dangerous than conscious evil. You can fight a person, you can expose a plan, but how do you fight a system that isn't actively trying to hurt you, but simply doesn't care if you get hurt? A system that's invisible, that reinforces itself, and has no single point you can even attack.
So we end up right back where we started, with a question. As our world gets more and more complex, more automated, this whole thought experiment leaves us with a really critical challenge. It's not enough for a system to be efficient or smart. The real question is this: how do we bake accountability into the very blueprint of our institutions? Something to think about.